I'm sure the participants who are here will have a lot of questions to ask you, maybe clarifications to seek also. So therefore, I would request people to raise their hands and ask the questions. In fact, I can see your first hand raised. Munad Dhanani. Maybe you can unmute and ask yourself, Munad Dhanani. First, introduce yourself and then ask the question. Thank you.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. My name is Muna Danani. When you mentioned about the form and essence, forms
can
will
you identify
change.
yourself? Where are you from? Munad Dhanani, please.
Yeah, I am from Democratic Republic of Congo in Lubumbashi city.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. When you define, when you say that the forms will change, the essence will remain. Does it go with the current prayers, fasting methods, and all others, or those are already established?
No. They will change as well. Undeniably, they will change, but in extreme circumstances. So now we are thinking of colonizing Mars. Now, when we reach Mars, in accordance with the essence of fast and remembrance of God regularly throughout the day, we will have to re-envisage the forms of devotions as well. There's not a moon similar to our moon on Mars. There is not a 24-hour axial rotation that Mars has. It doesn't have the same level of gravity. It doesn't have Hajj or the direction of prayer. So these particular devotional aspects in accordance with the specific essences that they have will have to be reformulated, but they are in extreme circumstances. By and large, they are very stable.
Thank you. Anyone else? They may please raise their hands.
I think Khwaja Bhai Shahid.
Yeah. Khwaja Sahab, you want to ask something? Please go ahead. Khwaja Shahid Sahab, are you there? Okay, I think we can't reach him. Anybody else who would like to ask a question? Okay, it looks like I think no one has any question for the moment. So I think Khwaja Sahab is back. Yeah, Khwaja Sahab, go ahead. Please go ahead, Khwaja Sahab. Please ask your question. Yeah.
We can't hear you. Khwaja Sahab.
I think you are unmuted already, Khwaja Sahab. Maybe you keep your mic near you. We can't hear you. We can't hear you, Khwaja Sahab. No, we can't hear you at all. Although you are not muted, but we can't hear you. No, I think Khwaja Sahab, if you can hear me, there's some problem. I've just muted you again so that if the technical difficulty, unmute yourself and ask. We can't hear you, Khwaja Sahab. We can't hear you. If you can hear me, maybe reconnect. No, we can't hear you at all. So I think in the meantime, we can ask somebody else to ask a question. If there are nobody, then maybe we can discuss another concept if everyone agrees. Khwaja Sahab, you need to probably sort out the technical problem that is there on your side. We can't hear you at all, although you are not muted. I think he keeps, nevertheless. And Arif Sahab, since nobody's asking a question, maybe I would initiate another discussion with you, if you can hear me.
Yes.
See, you mentioned during the course of your discussion that Islam means surrender. I have a slightly different notion of Islam, which I thought I will put across to you for the discussion and maybe clarification of what I feel that from my study that the primary meaning of Islam is peace, and the secondary meaning is security or surrender. Therefore, whenever the Quran talks about inna dina, for instance, the Quran says inna dina indallahi al-Islam, the deen which is acceptable in the eyes of Allah is Islam. And deen again doesn't mean religion here. Deen actually means uh, the way of life, the value system that all religions talk about. So what the Quran essentially says is the value system that is acceptable to God is Islam. So in my opinion, whenever we talk of the word surrender, whenever we give this meaning to the word Islam, there is an element of force, because no surrender is without force. There is an element of coercion, because no person would want to surrender before anybody, even God, without being forced to do that. And the Quran is very clear about surrender. And Quran says there's no compulsion in Islam. La ikraha fid din. In the value system, there's no compulsion. It's for the good of everybody. So therefore, anybody who thinks that he is going to be benefited is free to follow this system. There's no compulsion. So the idea of coercion is alien to Islam, is antithetical to the concept of Islam itself. So therefore, in my opinion, the primary meaning here would be, and the meaning that would take precedence would be peace. So therefore, this verse can be interpreted as, the value system in the eye of that acceptable in the eyes of Allah is that which seeks to establish peace on this planet, which is Islam. So what would you say to this?
So yes, that's wonderful. But if you were to accept the value system of peace, then what are you doing? Are you not willfully surrendering and committing yourself to uphold that value system?
Um, do you
Our,
think?
our, own, our own commitment to an ideology, would you not say that that commitment to that ideology is my surrender to it? Not surrender, that is the surrender seen as by force, but my inward acknowledgement and my inward commitment. Could you not say that you can use the word surrender to depict that meaning as well?
Uh, I think, in my opinion, of course, with due recognition to what you said, I think, don't you think any acceptance of a system is actually based on the recognition of the system, based on the recognition of the goodness of it to society and to the person in general, right?
Sure.
So should we not use the word recognition there instead of surrender? Because I have, in my opinion, I'm just thinking aloud, of course, subject to you clarifying it, because I have a great regard for your scholarship. I feel, don't you think that if we have another word wherein the element of coercion is eliminated, should we not be adopting it in place of surrender or submission?
Of course, if the word surrender is connotated with duress and force, then of course we should find a better term. And if that is acceptance
Yeah,
of is wholesome and growth promoting and value based, of course that's what we should be accepting it. Of course.
absolutely. I agree. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for this. If
You're
anybody else wants to say anything on this, perhaps they can go.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, you're audible now, please.
So can I ask my original question?
Yes, Khayasa,
Okay,
please go
thank
ahead.
you very much. Thank you for this fascinating talk, and congratulations to both of you. My question very specific and pertaining to the Indian context, and maybe applicable to a Western context also. See, when you say there are many laws, many part of laws which are flexible in the state of flex and can is changeable. I have one particular example in mind. I have many things in example in mind, but one particular I refer now is inter-community marriages. Is inter-community marriages, particularly in Indian context, where Muslim girls are marrying a non-Muslim or a Hindu, or vice versa, a Muslim is marrying a Hindu girl. If is where will they fit into in your interpretation of that flexible part of the Sharia or flexible part of the law, whatever word you want to use it? I mean, there are issues like this. I'm not going to talk about the political use of love jihad. I don't want to use that word. I don't want to go into that. But there is a real issue. There are many Muslim girls marrying non-Muslim, whether they are Christians or Hindus or others. What about their marriages, the children, and where do they stand in the eyes of law? And believe me, and take my word, Many of these girls I know, they're devout Muslim. They offer namaz 5 times, they observe roza, and they're devout Muslim. Same goes to the boys, they are devout boys marrying Hindu girls. Whether we place Hindus in as a kitab, Hindu girls in as a kitab, or otherwise. So there's a specific thing which is happening in our society, and I would like to enlighten on that issue.
No, thank you. Thank you for that wonderful question and observation. So, when the Quran prohibits the community of the faithful from marrying the mushrik, when we analyze those verses very, very carefully, we will see that the mushriks there were enemies of God. They did not value the teachings God was giving of morality and virtues. So in DIA, Darul Ifta wal I'tiqad at the Al-Mahdi Institute, which is comprised of Deobandi, Brelwi, Ahlul Hadith, and Shia, we concluded that there is no hard and fast law within Islam for people to marry or not to be able to marry outside their faith. There's only one hard and fast rule in the Quran, that people should not marry whoever is considered the enemy of God. Other than that, they can marry. However, Islam discourages marriage with people who are not seen as at parity with the person. And this parity obviously means faith parity as well and cultural parity as well. And that leads to further problems in terms of, well, the offsprings and their status and their identity. Now, as far as how does God look at them, of course, God judges everyone in terms of their subjective being and how they are relating to God. But in essence, we cannot prohibit such marriages. However, if it is problematic and we are seeing that it is affecting our sense of identity, I do not believe that in the future this will be an issue, because humanity will gradually evolve with a sense of one religion, which is God orientation and virtue, and they will be able to withstand their plurality in a very mature manner, just like different cultures can come together in marriage, provided they are Muslims or of the same faith. I think the whole of entirety of religion is on that trajectory. But for now, if it is problematic, then I think the scholars and the elders of the community need to come together. On the one hand, we cannot coerce our boys and girls into marrying people they don't want to marry. On the other hand, we cannot force them not to marry the one that they want to marry. We can just admonish them and tell them of the problems that lie ahead. However, since it's becoming increasingly practiced, I think we need to see this as an issue that we need to discuss, in which we talk with the boys and girls to have a proper understanding of what marriage life means, of what having children means, what responsibility is all about. And then after that, if they still decide to marry, that we do not disown them, we do not chastise them or ostracize them, but instead deal with them as we would deal with mature adults and explain to them that, look, okay, fine, you've decided this, but now be mindful of that inner God orientation, of virtues, of morality, of the way in which you will bring up your children. I think that education is needed, and that discussion is much needed as to how we now go about handling this particular issue.
May I add, if the time permits, if the admin permitting? May I?
Yes,
See,
please go ahead.
my specific question was vis-a-vis Hindus marrying with Hindus in Indian context. I have myself personally helped a girl, Muslim girl, marrying a Christian boy, Indian girl, Indian Muslim Christian boy. And I have encouraged parents to accept this marriage, and they did get married finally. And of course, they are living thereafter. So that's another issue, marrying Christians, Muslim girls marrying Christian. Now, my specific question, marrying to Hindus, we place them among polytheists, or if we place them as a mushrik, or idol worshippers. Idol worshippers, mushrik, or polytheists. Now, specifically, what your general points are well taken, sir, very well taken. Counseling them, children's issue, cultural values, equality of cultural values, all well taken, and these are applicable to any marriage within community, outside community. So specifically, I'm addressing an issue with marrying to whom we call polytheist, all mushrik, or not as a kitab?
So here it is. In my book 3, I've discussed the meaning of polytheists and kuffar, and I've said the Hindus don't belong to any of these groups. Yes, because the polytheists that the Quran talks about are people who also believed in Allah, some of them, but the problematic area was that they opposed God. By opposing God, they opposed the values given by God. Now, if you ask a modern day Hindu, I mean, some of them are highly educated, and some of them are not so educated, and we can see that amongst the Muslims as well. So the highly educated, they will say, of course, there's only one God. There can't be other than one God, straight off. And that God is moral and is virtuous and so on and so forth. Now, if you were to ask them, then, well, what are all these idols? They will say, well, they're not God as such. We know that. These are the manifestations of God, but ultimately there's only one God. So they are monotheistic. The Muslims in the past endeavored to include the Hindus and later on the Buddhists and the Jains within the folds of Ahlul Kitab, because they all seem to be coming from Abraham. And of course, we need a lot more studies.
Yeah.
That the Zoroastrians worship stars and duality, but the Prophet said, no, in essence, they are people of the book. They have distorted their faith. So if you look at the Hindus, they will say, no, there is ultimately one God, so they're monotheistic. And they believe in the same values that the monotheists believe in. And 3, they also have the notion of Brahma and Saraswati that many of us speculate could be akin to Ibrahim and Sarah and so on and so forth. And their Mahanush, which is telling the story of Nabi Nuh and the great deluge and the flood, so on and so forth. So the problem with shirk is setting up rival gods against God, who ordain contrary to what God is ordaining. You will not find a single Hindu who does that, because they will be seen as enemies of humanity. Now, if we were to develop this further, then we will see, well, according to this equation of having manifestation of God, then the Christians can be put in the same boat as being mushrik. But the Quran adamantly refuses to call Christians mushrik. It calls Christians Ahlul Kitab. And if we were to take it even further, then the Muslims will call each other mushrik for setting up awliya and so on and so forth. So these things need to be understood with a very sharp, rational knife. Now, I've tried to do this in my book 3, in which I've concluded that the Hindus are not mushrik in accordance with the usage of the word in the Quran. Similarly, the agnostic and the atheist are not enemies of God. There is a different way of looking at these things. Enemy of God is one opposed to the values espoused by God and the virtues espoused by God. And I'm sorry if it's a very long-winded, roundabout way of explanation.
That
No,
was
it's fine.
clear.
It's fine. It's fine. Interesting, because as I'll go ahead with yours. This requires more discussion, and as you say, educated Hindus, enlightened Hindus, but there is a whole lot of Hindus and a whole lot of Muslims who are not as enlightened as we expect them, or as you are perhaps referring to them. So there may be a category of enlightened people, Muslims, Hindus, and Christian, and there is a category of non-enlightened Hindus and Muslims, and the numbers may vary, the percentages may vary. So fine, but it requires a lot more discussion, because if we accept then that the marriages of a Muslim girl with a Hindu boy is permissible, it should not happen, or it should be tried to dissuade, try to convince that it will lead to problem, but it's permissible under law. It's permissible under Islamic law. It's not bad under Islamic law. Then it's okay. If it's not bad under Islamic law, that's the point I'm trying to argue. So I am married to a girl who was a Hindu. So 40 years back, 30, 40 years back. So if it's not bad in law, then I'm okay. And if it's bad in Islamic law, then I'm not okay. That's the point I'm trying to find out.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
if I can just add one more thing. Thank you so much. In essence, we don't
I'm
see.
sorry I brought out my personal matter. But not,
No,
I
no,
didn't want to.
it's very refreshing to hear you actually recount your own personal experiences. It adds to our knowledge base. So in essence, we don't find anything wrong, but it's highly discouraged. And in every group, we have the enlightened and we have others who do not know any better. But the Blessed Prophet when he said that the Zoroastrians are the people of the book and treat them like the people of the book, he did not look at the common denominator who are not enlightened. He looked at them as they are in essence. In essence, they are people of the book, even though they don't understand what they really believe in, but they are people of the book in essence. And I think this prophetic outlook can suit us very well in the current climate in the world that we are in.
If I may add something to that, Arif Saab, would you permit me if you can add something
Sure,
to this?
sure.
Yeah. Uh, in fact, I entirely agree with you on the definition of mushrik itself. If you look at the Quran, as you rightly pointed out, the Quran does not use this word mushrik uh, and kuffar, kafir, to any other community except those who were living in Mecca and who were vehemently opposed to the prophetic mission. And to no community has been mentioned. But why does the Quran only call those people as mushriks and not any other community? So I have a thesis on that, a small theory. Do listen to it if you, if you could correct me, or maybe you could add something to that. That would be much appreciated. My understanding of this situation is this: because those were the people, the Quran had never objected to their worshipping other gods, because God himself or itself, or the power God, because some people have a problem attributing a male gender to God. So therefore the power that God is so big and so independent of any requirement, like the word ghani symbolizes. The Quran says Allah ghani wa antum fuqara. So therefore God is not in need of anybody's worship in that sense. So therefore God does not mind if people worship him or reject him or entirely accept him. It doesn't make a difference to God's divinity does not increase enhance the divinity of God if the whole world accepts him, or does not diminish God if the whole world rejects God. So what here is mentioned in this particular idea of mentioning using the word mushrik for these people is this: those people were using multiple divinities or multiple idols, in the sense, to exploit the society. So what Quran was objecting to was usage of polytheism as a means of exploitation. That was what was being objected to by the Quran and the Prophet. The Prophet was actually not opposed to them, because the Quran says, La ikraha fid din, lakum dinukum waliyadin, to you your deen, to us ours. So if Quran certainly does not prohibit another person from being an atheist or an agnostic or a polytheist or even a pantheist. So what the Quran was objecting to was the exploitation through these means. So in that sense, it was only that community which was doing in Mecca. It is being referred to as the mushriks. Whereas the Christians or the Jews in Medina were not doing that. And nor were the Zoroastrians doing that, nor were the Sabians doing that. Therefore, these communities are not referred to as the mushriks. The mushriks are only those who use polytheism as a source of exploitation to corner all resources. Exactly what the Meccans were doing. They were cornering resources. They were exploiting people. They were subjugating the people. The entire society was suppressed. So this was what the Prophet was fighting for, the liberation. So this liberation of the people was what was the primary aim of Islam, not not forcing people to worship one creator. That was just incidental. The idea of the Tawheed in the Islam, in my opinion, was to say this, that, yes, don't let anybody fool you into believing that for getting something done, you need to appease a certain deity with so many camels or so many goats or so much produce or so much money. No, don't let it, because there is only one God. God doesn't indulge in these kind of activities. So only for that purpose it was used. Therefore, no other community which was doing that was called as mushriks. So in that sense, you're absolutely right, Arif Saab, that the present day Hindus in India cannot be called mushriks in that sense. They always say that we worship in the Brahman, the idea of Brahman, or the one abstract form of creator. They say that the other forms are just manifestations of that Brahman. Therefore, they're certainly not mushriks in that sense, and to put them under the category would actually be negating the very idea of Islamic deen itself. Would you agree with this interpretation, Arif Saab?
Yeah, I think you make a lot of sense in your analysis that the mushriks, uh, in the name of God, were exploiting the masses and justifying it
Yes.
and ordaining indecencies in the name of God. And therefore, Allah says, Allah does not ordain to indecencies or to injustices. What sort of attribution do you make to God? So you're absolutely right. They were using God for their own ends and their own sort of perverted desires. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I'll come in between, saying, of course, with this explanation with the Brother Faiz, of course, it means there has to be some motivation. Then only one can be called mushrik. A motivation or ultimate design or design of exploitation, as he says it. And unless there is some design or some ulterior motivation, or then only somebody can be called mushrik. Then, if this is the definition, then it can be applied to anybody from any deen, if that motivation is there, or that the ultimate intention is there. So
Yeah, that's what I
I'm
meant. Yes.
so
Yes.
it can be a Muslim can also be mushrik if he's
Yes.
exploiting a deen,
Yes.
deen for that ultimate intention or motivation
That's correct.
or vested interest, whatever
That's
you may
correct.
call it. Whatever you
Yes,
call it.
absolutely. A
So
Muslim can also be kafir in that sense.
kafir and mushrik. I'm not a
Yeah.
kafir. I'm at mushrik at the moment.
Yeah.
So the point is.
I think Arif Saab wants to say something.
So,
Yeah.
sorry, let me conclude with one sentence.
Yeah.
Arif Saab, sorry for butting in. Point is, if we categorize Hindus of India, I'm specific Hindus of India as non-mushrik or monotheists who's distorted their old practices or beliefs over a period of 3,000 years or 4,000 years, understandable. Like when many of us have done it in Islam also, understandable. So the marriage with them, Muslim girls marrying their boys may be discouraged, but not bad in law. If that is the conclusion.
Yes, I will agree, but it should be discouraged because the
Fair enough.
community is not mature enough right now to handle it. But in principle, in essence, you can't say it's haram. Now,
Oh, fine. Thank you very much, sir.
but Khaja Sahab, I need to just acknowledge what you have just said, that yes, Iblis talks with God, believes in Qiyamah, but he is called a kafir. Yes. Similarly, the Quran says majority of these people are mushrik. And I've discussed this in book 3 that the Muslims may be the biggest kuffar and the mushrik because shirk and kufr is done internally within the soul.
True.
So you're quite right. According to the language of the Quran, the labels of shirk and kufr are more internal than external. So a Muslim, as Faiz Bhai also just mentioned, can be termed as a kafir and can be termed as a mushrik. So these are across the board for humanity.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Because just like Arif Saab said, it is the aptitude of a person. If the aptitude is for all these things, for denying truth and for suppressing facts, then obviously Muslims are guilty of that. Many Muslims are guilty of that, and we need to be honest about it. And if Muslims, if Muslims espouse such an attitude, obviously they will come under the definition without any doubt. And I think I can see Irfan Bhai raise his hand. Irfan Bhai, can you please go ahead and ask your question?
Assalamualaikum, Sheikh Arif. Thank you very much, Faiz Bhai, for organizing one more lecture of Sheikh Arif, and really thankful to Sheikh for wonderful lecture. And it was something like, I can say for for soul to get some feeding, it's like a wonderful lecture and very well defined about the Sharia, the Deen. My question, Sheikh, is about the Deen. Now, if we translate Deen as a religion, then we restricted its meaning. And as you explained, the Deen means the divine discipline or permanent value So the mushrik were those who were against this permanent value, and that's why they were mushrik. And because the system of law, about justice and about what Allah has ordained us to do, that is the deen. So can we translate the verse la ikraha fi deen as there is no dislike or discouragement in following the permanent value? So if we are translating generally as there is no compulsion in religion, but deen is not a religion. Deen means a permanent value which God has given us. And divine discipline, the one which God wants us to hold. And mushrik are one who are against the divine discipline and that deen and the permanent value. So if we translate the verse la ikraha fi deen, the la ikraha fi deen is the same word from makruh, dislike. So there should be no dislike or discouragement in following the permanent value. Can we translate this verse like that as well?
So
This was, sorry.
So that would be a very sort of a wonderful esoteric interpretation, that there should be no hesitancy internally for becoming God-oriented. And that makes perfect sense as well, because for God to work on the soul and prevail, the soul and the heart has to very gently and wholesomely tend to God. And if there is any level of coercion or force or hesitancy, as you are saying, within the soul, then that would not manifest its effects. Because at the end of the day, God does not want the action of namaz, He wants the heart to yield to Him. So I do see a wonderful esoteric and a deeper meaning in what you are suggesting, that when we give ourselves over to God orientation and God-centricity, it has to be wholesomely, willfully, not only without coercion, but without any hesitation. I welcome that suggestion. Thank you.
Great.
And if you allow me one more thing, if I can ask you, Sheikh.
Please go ahead.
Can I ask one more thing?
Yes, Irfan bhai, please go ahead.
Sheikh, we discussed about the two witnesses and also about men are in charge of women. I just, my observation on the word rijal, if we see the root meaning, it means people who walked on foot or strong-footed. It is not gender-oriented. It's like it can be used for men and women. So the verse in chapter 4, verse 34, it can be translated as the powerful or authoritative or stronger person, be it male or a female, should stand for Nisa. Nisa also means the weaker segment of the society, if we go with the Lin dictionary. So what I understand over here is not related to some gender bias or men is protecting women, as you rightly said, in the even in the current scenario or in the future. Even women are like, nobody can tell German chancellor that she is running a country and man is providing her. She is strong enough to take care. So my point is the word, how it is interpreted, Rijal to be men and Nisa to be women, these are limiting the meaning of the Quran. If we take the wider meaning as strong support or stand for the weaker segment, or we take in 282 where it says, if you cannot find Rijal or a strong, well-versed, like if you cannot find one surgeon, then take two junior surgeons. So it is talking about a stronger, if you cannot find a stronger person, be it male or female, both are included in Rijal. Then you find out somebody who is assisting, like a doctor and two junior surgeons, a surgeon or two junior surgeons, or two surgeons If not, then one surgeon and two junior surgeons. So why there is a gender biasness when it is translating, when it is translated to Rijal as only men, which according to my understanding, it can also include women. Jazakallah.
I think that's such a wonderful observation you're making, and I'll certainly pay heed to that. And the Quran also further expresses بِمَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بَعَضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعَضٍ, through the grace that Allah has given to some over others. So exactly in sync with what you're saying, that the strength is given to one, that is known as Rijal, over the other, which is known as Nisa. However, at the level of interpretation and translation, the Quran has a face value meaning that was supposed to be understood by the recipient community of the Prophet. Obviously, they were not understanding the word Rijal to mean the stronger one and Nisa to mean the weaker one. For them, Rijal meant the gender man and Nisa meant the gender female. So they understood it that men have the authority over women. But then again, the verse, due to what God has bestowed over some, with some over others, that too clarifies the meaning that you're getting at, that this priority is in a state of flux because it is based on the natural strength and the weakness. So I'm just trying to answer the question as to why it was translated as man. It's only because simply that they understood it in their language to mean man and woman. But then Quran gives the essence of the law, which you are extrapolating from the very word of Rijal and Nisa, which gives further sort of strength to that particular interpretation, that because God has at this point favored the Rijal, as you are saying, over the Nisa, but in the future, when the Nisa have the favor, then the Nisa will become Rijal, and when the men do not have as much favor, then they will become the Nisa. I think that's a wonderful observation. Thank you.
In fact, Arif Saab, we must also not forget the 7th century context.
Yes, absolutely.
Are you there? Yeah. The 7th century context also should be kept in mind. The 7th century context was also highly patriarchal. Women were just chattels, devoid of any rights. So therefore, when the Quran says Al-Rijaluna Qawwamuna Al-Nisa, so it only talks about the reality of the 7th century, during which time the men were not just physically powerful, but actually societally powerful. They were powerful enough to exercise the authority because of power, because of the weapons that they hold, and because of the violence that they were doing, because of all that. And women being the weaker sex in the sense that they were physically little weaker, they were not able to counter that, and therefore women were suppressed. So in this situation, the Quran says that if that is the situation, what prevails in the 7th century today, therefore the onus of protecting the woman, the onus of administering, here is not Qawwamuna, doesn't mean that he rules over the woman. It actually means he's a caretaker. He's an administrator who will provide for the woman, because you are the one who have deprived this whole section, 50% of the community. You have made them irrelevant. Therefore, you will pay for it, literally. So they are made to pay for it. And when, as you said, the society evolves over a period of time, and what the Quran initiated in those times, the equality of women. When after certain time, the Quran envisaged that the men and women will become equal, and then it will balance out. So this again, we talk about the state of being a state of flux. So this was a law that was, or rather a norm that was for the 7th century situation at that time, and we cannot generalize it or fix it for all times to come. So if, as you said, today there are households where it is the man, for certain genuine reasons, is unable to provide for the family. It is a woman who does that. So it is there in that situation. Whether she's weak or powerful is not the question. She is weak, and yet financially the man is weaker than her. Financially, this woman becomes stronger to take care of the family. So, and in some situations, even societally, politically, the woman is stronger. What if the woman happens to be the prime minister, or the like she mentioned the case of Angela Merkel? She is the leader of that country. The husband being given a strong agenda, quote unquote, he does not wield the same amount of power. So politically, here a woman is more powerful. It's possible financially also. In some cases, a woman is powerful. Therefore, the whole thing equation would change, irrespective of Rizal being a stronger people, and I mean Nisa being weaker section. But as far as I know, no such meaning has been attributed over the centuries for these two terms, as what Irfan Bhai said.
But I do acknowledge the observations of Irfan Saab that it's a wonderful hermeneutical method to look at the roots of those words, because we all know, as in accordance with the hadith of the Prophet, that the Quran has layers and depths of meaning. And with every successive generation, a new depth of meaning is revealed. So if the word Rijal and Nisa in their original postulation have that flexibility to derive this sort of fluidity of interpretation, then who is there to say that when these words were chosen by the divine, that they were not chosen with a specific intent of them yielding those meanings to different minds when they awaken to them? So nonetheless, it's a very good hermeneutical method to go out to try and understand the meanings of these laws afresh. So yes, I agree with you, Faisal, but I agree with this wonderful contribution that Irfan Saab is making.
Yes, of course.
That the word Rijal and the word Nisa in themselves are dynamic enough to give those meanings in any case. But even if they're not, then the clarification in the Quran is there, bima faddalallah ba'aduhum ala ba'ad, which you are hinting at, that the fadl might be changing at any different era and at any different time or any different particular couple. So yes,
due to circumstances.
Yeah. So what of these methods, if we can bring them together, then I think it's a wonderful way of going forward.
The whole idea of discussion is that to explore more ideas.
Yeah.
So Irfan Bhai's contribution is very much welcome, and we need to think on those lines. Certainly, I'm not denying that at all.
Yeah.
So I don't see any other raised hands. Would anybody would like to ask anything to Arif Sahib? Please feel free to raise your hands, or unmute and ask.
And I think, Faiz Saab, if people are tired, then I think it's time.
Okay. I think we already reached 90 minutes of our discussion.
Okay.
So maybe perhaps we should end it here then, Arif Sahib?
Yes.
Okay. So therefore, once again, I thank you, Arif Sahib. You have spent so much of your time, precious time. I know how busy you are, and despite that, this discussion was absolutely wonderful and in depth. In fact, we have what do you call initiated a lot more thought onto the hermeneutical aspects of Quran and its terminologies, which I'm sure all the people who participated today would go back home and apply their own minds and maybe rethink and also do more research on Islam and the Quran, especially the terms that we spoke of today, Islam and Sharia, and also Millah and Deen. These are the four basic terms. And the essence of today's meeting is that we would like to say that nobody can rigidify, if I can use that word, Islam, and kind of impose it on any society, which we know Taliban is trying to do in Afghanistan today. We totally oppose that. We even from our forum, the Islamic Forum for the Promotion of Moderate Thought, we totally condemn any idea, the interpretation of Islam as formulated by Taliban, and that they are trying to impose in Afghanistan, which is, in your opinion, is totally opposed to the prophetic Islam. that comes from the Quran. So therefore, we would like to end with these words here, and thank Sheikh Arif Saab for his time, and also I thank every participant who.
Jazakallah, Arif Saab. Thank you.
Yeah, Hanif bhai, you didn't say anything. Now did you?
No, I enjoy hearing Sheikh Saab.
Yeah,
He enlightens us.
You should provoke him into more discussion.
I think I was enjoying what he said, and I always enjoy. It's very enlightening. I have read all his books, and
yes,
wonderful ideas on Islam, and I believe is a true scholar. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair, Saab.
Yeah, it's our privilege.
It's your kind heart, honestly, Hanif bhai. Thank you.
And finally, let me thank all the participants who also took the time and stayed with us right through. And